I believe everyone is. Now lit in from the waiting room. Good morning, good evening to people in the Middle East, in Doha. Good morning, in Berkeley. My name is Ahmed Diab, assistant professor at the Department of Middle Eastern Languages and Cultures. It's my great pleasure to welcome Dr. Amal Malki for today's talk. Representations of women, Arab women, East and West. I will start with sharing a brief bio of the very long and extensive and accomplished bio of Dr. Al-Malki, and then Dr. Malki will take the stage. That will be followed by a period of question and answer. Feel free to share your questions through the chat window. Dr. Amal Malki is the founding dean of the College of Humanities and Social Sciences at Hamad Bin Khalifa University, Qatar Foundation in Doha, Qatar. Dr. Al-Malki holds a PhD in Comparative Literature from the University of London-SOAS, where she also earned a master's degree in English, Arabic, Applied Linguistics.
I'm happy to share with you the bio of Dr. Al-Malki. She is the founding dean of the College of Humanities and Social Sciences at Hamad Bin Khalifa University, Qatar Foundation. She holds a PhD in Comparative Literature from the University of London-SOAS, where she also earned a master's degree in English, Arabic, Applied Linguistics, and Translation. She was the executive director of the Translation.Interpreting Institute, which she also founded in 2011. She also was an associate professor at Carnegie Mellon University in Qatar, where she taught courses in writing composition, postcolonial literature, theories of translation, and Islamic feminism. Dr. Al-Malki's research interests include the negotiation of identity between East and West, media representations of Arab women, and post-colonial literature. She has published numerous articles in academic journals in the United States and the UK. Her book, Arab Women in Arab News, Old Stereotypes and New Media, is published by Bloomsbury Qatar Foundation and Bloomsbury Academic UK. It was lauded as the first comprehensive study of its kind in the world. She also edited The Writer's Craft, Teaching Creative Writing in Qatar, published as part of an initiative honoring Doha as the Arab Capital of Culture in 2010. Dr. Al-Malki has been invited to speak at numerous conferences and forums throughout the Middle East, United States, and the UK. She also lectured at Durham University, SOAS, Maryland University, amongst others. In 2018, Dr. Al-Malki was selected by the Ministry of Europe and Foreign Affairs in Paris as the Personnalité d'Avenir Genre, Future Personality for Gender Equality. It's my great pleasure to welcome Dr. Al-Malki to UC Berkeley's Center of Middle Eastern Studies, and I leave you with today's talk, Representation of Arab Women, East and West.
Good morning, everyone, and Dr. Ahmed, thank you so much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here among all of you, although I would have loved it if I was giving this talk in person, maybe next year. I've spent considerable time researching and writing about women from our part of the world through looking at different forms of representation, whether it's in creative writing, comparative literature, media. I looked at identity politics and nation building, education, and other intersected themes. What is really important to me as a scholar is to produce indigenous scholarship. And I adopted this as an important agenda when I became a dean, and thus launched programs in translation, women's studies, and Middle Eastern studies. As a feminist seeking different venues for activism, I've recently launched Women of the Middle East podcast because I wanted to build on the book's success and expand its frontiers in terms of scope and audience. The book managed to do two original things when it was published. One was to study Arabic news translated into English by an Arab, and secondly, to capture the beginning of the boom of online news and new media journalism. It felt like a natural evolution to adopt the content of the book to a new medium like a podcast. In my talk today, I'll be reflecting on the research conducted in my book and connect it and expand on it to cover today's realities that impact and influence Arab women representations. So let's begin. There are many definitions, many images used to refer to Arab women, and there is the usual conflation between Arab and Muslim women, let alone Arabs and Muslims, because not all Arabs are Muslims, and not all Muslims are Arabs. Arab woman as a category is a very interesting yet hard case to study because the Arab women inhabit different regions across not only Arab countries but even the so-called West. Arab women adopt different ideologies, face and live within different socio-economic and political realities. Some are empowered by the very fact that they're born where they were born, and some are agents of empowerment to other women, and some live under poverty, dictatorship, illiteracy, and are willingly submissive. Many Western studies have been conducted on Arab women, claiming to unveil them to the Western audience, and in many ways have reduced them to one homogeneous image or stereotype. Arab woman has become a category, not a human who may generate interest, admiration, or even sympathy. In Western culture and media, there is a clear tendency to depict Arab women as passive, powerless, and culturally subordinate to men. Thus, the Western reader and audience has no option but to believe what they read and what they saw. So let's dig deeper into the Western representation of the Arab woman. The Arab woman is an historical construct of culture and media, an image to the world. The imagistic Arab woman is not a unique individual to know, but a quick stereotype to nourish the illusion of acquaintance. The illusion is powerful because in very short order it lends the feel of insider understanding to perfect strangers. The illusion is dangerous because it can delude these same strangers, consumers of her image, into a false confidence that they know her without knowing her at all. From 1850 to the present day, much of the West imagery of Arab women was staged in Western photography and film in an effort to capture the exotic Arab woman, much as a National Geographic crew would be sent out to capture for Western markets the site of a rare animal species on a remote island. To cater to many Western readers' curiosity for the mysterious and the other, the Arab woman was historically eroticized and her harem reimagined as a brothel. Visuals within the image bite served as substantiation of the verbal channel. Mountains of images of silent and veiled Arab women in staged and compliant poses were used to support the cultural stereotype that Arab women were passive. In the West and until this day, Arab women are perceived within the boundaries of the Western myth of rescue, the belief that Arab women, veiled and secluded, must be saved from their own cultures. This myth has been pervasive through the West since 1800 and has a long and unhappy history. The myth predates the era of European colonization of Arab territories and was certainly a contributing factor to it. Both during colonization and even after, the myth has been reinforced and commoditized across, across all manners of artifacts, from postcard images of Algerian women sold as trinkets to French tourists, to editorial cartoons mocking women in veil, to staged photography of Western models posing as harem women in the formative days of Hollywood, to depictions of Arab women submitting willingly to male domination or the male domination in modern Hollywood movies. Western media has replicated variation of the rescue myth, showing Arab women to be unassertive, confined, and voiceless.
Doc-
Consumers of media, consumers
Dr.
of
Malki,
media,
I'm sorry to interrupt you. There's some static noise in the audio from your on your end. Is there any way to fix that?
so I'll continue then. So consumers of media had no choice but to trust the knowledge and judgments of other people that they acquired from fast-moving and easy-to-grab images filtered through their own cultural lens. The mass media produce and circulate these images, and because of the influence these images exert on intercultural perception and policy, media images of various groups, including Arab women, have emerged as a legitimate and important area of academic study. Westerners have predominantly glimpsed Arab women in media where their words and actions are interpreted through a third-person narrative account or image bites. Western audience have been deprived from listening to Arab women's own stories through their own words. Most stories are either reported about them, referred to them, quoting them mainly when the story meets their agenda. And let's bear in mind that the Arab woman is a foreign element after all. She is the other who speaks a different language, among other differentiating elements. Thus, both reported and direct speeches occur mainly in translation. Image bites of Arab women expose them in photojournalism with their voices silenced and with captions or voice-over commentary that is not their own, made known in the West largely through image bites. Arab women in Western media have been subalterns who did not speak but were spoken for. Now, what happens when we move east? How does Arab women represent, or how does Arab media represent Arab women? Many studies from East and West have been conducted to study the pervasiveness of Saeed Orientalist stereotypes of Arab women in Western media, and many succeeded in doing so. Several empirical studies have tested the perpetuation of these assumptions in Arab media as well. The results were shocking. The Arab audiences similarly have been consumers of images that are not necessarily reflective of the Arab woman's diverse reality. In my book, I moved east, looking for the real story about the day-to-day reality of Arab women, because in no way I, as an Arab woman, would arrogantly claim to say I know, because I don't, although I may be an expert on the context I live in. As I moved east, I confronted the hard fact of media invisibility of women. This is true worldwide. No matter how far we travel beyond the prejudiced eyes of the West to see Arab women, we discover that even in their own lands, Arab women, compared with men, are mostly unseen in media. In part one of the book, we reported the study where we quoted Arab women and Arab news for their level of activity or passivity as participants in Arab news stories. One of our early findings was the widespread erasure of Arab women in hard news. The big headline is that Arab women in Arab news are neither active nor passive. They're unseen. Another headline is that the press with an international reach is more likely to include women in their news than local press. We found 4 media sources from the liberal pan-Arab press accounted for over 40% of female keywords in the news briefs in our sample of 100 media sources. To track the state of Arab women in Arab news, we decided to restrict our coding study on these 4 pan-Arab media. Within the scope of these media, we found that Arab women are significantly more active than US social science had found Arab women to be in pre-internet US news. In the sample of pan-Arab news we coded, we found that the Arab women are often quoted, so their voices contribute constructively to the story. And this phenomenon alone, what we call the source effect, makes Arab women more active in Arab news in a way that already exceeds most pre-internet Western coverage. Now, the worldwide phenomenon of female invisibility in media lives side by side with a parallel worldwide media phenomenon that refers to women's growing purchasing power, even in the face of their stagnant political power, the growth of media niches targeted mainly to women. The the emerging women's market and media, exaggerating women's visibility in a world scrubbed for women friendliness, rises from ashes as a gendered counterforce to women's overall media and visibility. In this parallel universe for women's media, media producers take pains to develop programming content that caters to women, that promotes their identity politics, that divides women against men or women against themselves, and that showcases women at the leading edge of trends in work or leisure. The Middle East and North Africa are no exception to this worldwide trend. The Middle East and North Africa Media Guide, for example, shows that women's publications are an important and growing sector of consumers' publications, featuring not only publications marked for women, but emerging niche lifestyle markets that are weighted heavily towards female interests, such as shopping, fashion, bridal magazines, food, cooking, and parenting and childcare. The same niche markets have grown in Arab radio and news and feature on-air programming and print sections devoted to women's concerns. This tendency is in fact a documented empirical trend in much of Arab media. For example, the Center of Arab Women for Training and Research and the United Nations Development Fund for Women state as much in their 2006 report titled Arab Women, Development Report, Arab Women and the Media Analytic Survey for Women Research Studies from 1995 to 2005. So the report covers a decade of research on media images of Arab women and Arab media. It reviews 23 studies on the image of women in Arab drama, in the movies, TV series. The study found that 79% of the images of women were negative, focusing on women as sex objects, unintelligent, inexperienced, materialistic, manipulative, childlike, weak, and dependent. Now, for the qualitative study of the book, which is part 2, we discovered that Arab women appear in news under a very diverse categories of topics, some indicating active roles, some passive roles, but often a mixture of both. We found women under the broad and active categories of anger and resistance, determination and drive, education and empowerment. But we also saw women as victims of war, discrimination in the workplace, and forms of misogyny and patriarchy, which were sometimes very subtle and sometimes very unsubtle. In the end, our results were hopeful but cautious. Compared to social science studies of the portrayal of Arab women in Arab news conducted during the 1980s and 1990s, Arab women have come a long way as a united force and a powerful voice in hard news. However, even today, Arab women in hard news reflected the hard social and political challenges that women continue to face worldwide. Still, what happened after the time frame of the book? We've witnessed a flash bulb historical event, and that is the so-called Arab Spring of 2011, or the revolutions, Arab revolutions that took over Arab countries, starting from Tunisia. This highlighted a new era for women and feminism and feminist activism, which took a digital form. During the revolutions, social media as well as citizen journalism proved its importance in transcending the barriers women faced within their societies by invading the political sphere, which is a male-dominated one. Women were able to create their own political messages and communicate them to the public through announcing their activism and grouping supporters, which started online, then became physical. For example, April 6 youth movement activist Asma Mahfouz announced on her Facebook wall that she was headed to Tahrir Square and urged others to join her there to save Egypt. This is only one example of hundreds of examples. A notable feature of this online political activism was first, its bilingualism or multilingualism, and second, its multimodality. Digital activism has become a field of study, especially in relation to women and feminist movements in the MENA region, which some call cyberfeminism in the Arab world. Today, we learn about how digital helps humanistic causes to be amplified, to get circulated and reach out to a bigger audience. Whether we're talking about gender equality or exposing human right or human right abuses, or even practicing freedom of speech, digital activism
is a powerful form of activism that has proven thus far that when it makes noise, governments listen, as well as the rest of the world. The Arab world witnessed a strong form of feminist digital activism post-Arab Spring as well. One prominent movement came from Saudi Arabia. Manal al-Sharif, who's an activist, a female activist, launched Women to Drive hashtag in 2011 as a Facebook campaign to urge Saudi women to get into their cars and drive, which had a domino effect. The campaign started when the Sharif posted on her social media accounts a video of herself driving, which went viral and gained international attention. She was detained, she was jailed by Saudi authorities, but later released. She ended up leaving the country. But this didn't deter other women who took the road posting on social media videos of themselves behind the wheels. Now remember, back then, Saudi Arabia was the only country in the world where women were not allowed to drive. In June 2016, Saudi women initiated another campaign. This time, the Twitter campaign called for the end of guardianship system, questioning the religious justification behind it. This campaign resonated with many feminists and activists across the MENA region, whose laws had embedded forms of guardianship, reducing women to a minor or a second-class citizen. Social media proves to be a critical force for women in the MENA region. While in some parts of the MENA, it substitutes civil society that maybe do not occur or is not there, and provides a safe medium for women to express their activism. In other parts, it complements and it amplifies their voices. This new feminist rhetoric uses a new language to describe Arab women that exists in parallel to, but unfortunately doesn't replace the old persistent colonialist or Orientalist language. This new language takes at its heart the revolutionary nature of this era. Women are described as revolutionaries, rebels. They're speaking out and they're seeking change. And a new vocab arises describing new trends of feminist activism in the Arab countries. However, issues of Orientalist reframing still proves to be an inhibitor. Western media still reframes these stories through the lenses of a distorted historical frame instead of standing on today's realities. Which leads me to talk about Arab feminisms as an important topic I would like to end my talk with. Arab women have been impacted by patriarchal religious interpretations, traditions, social norms, and Orientalist attitudes and modernist attitudes. The Orientalists exoticized and reduced representation of Arab and Muslim women, again, I conflate here and I use them interchangeably, was adopted by liberal Western feminism. They assumed the uniformity of Muslim and Arab women's experiences. However, feminisms in the Arab world are as many as the context they're generated from. Feminism is a term, as you know, that was coined in France in the 1880s. It appeared in English in the first decade of the 20th century, first in Britain and then in the United States. Then it appeared in Arabic as Nisa'iyya. Not Nasawiya, it appeared as Nisa'iyya in Egypt in early 1920s. Margaret Badran emphasizes that feminisms are produced in particular places and articulated in local terms. We have in the Arab world radical feminism, secular feminism, Islamic feminism, hybrid forms of feminisms. Secular feminists, for example, want gender equality and seek universal human rights, while Islamic feminists want gender equity and fairness and seek to eradicate the patriarchal interpretations of the Quran. Hybrid feminists belong to different schools of thoughts, for example, intersectional, transnational. Feminist movements across the MENA region differ according to the historical, cultural, political, economic context they appear in. Women's struggles intersect and diverge across their diverse realities. Arab feminisms began as a third world or underneath the banner of third world feminism, and feminist movements began as a nationalistic movements. Women fought British and French colonialism and during Palestinian occupation. For example, women participated and anti-colonial demonstrations in Egypt as early as 1879 and marched against the British in 1919. In 1950, Egyptian women demanded their political rights. Women still fight on a daily basis in occupied Palestine, Iraq, Syria, Yemen. The MENA region is no short of feminist NGOs and civil society who are fighting for the rights of women. I'll end with this quote by Basaruddin, who suggests that there is an urgent need for a cross-cultural dialogue between Western and Arab feminisms in order to create a space that allows differences to be recognized and examined, and crafting a meeting point for women to relate across their differences. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Al-Malki, for this very rich and dense expose of your work so far. And it's I'm usually closer to the qualitative analysis, and it's refreshing to also see the large-scale studies and the quantitative aspect of this kind of research. I would like to invite the people in attendance to share their questions in the chat while we open the Q&A period for discussion. I have a few questions about the different forms of feminism that you touched upon, Dr. Al-Malki. To what extent, and the closing remarks about an invitation to dialogue, to what extent do you find that the neo-colonial paradigm ends up reproducing NGOs, ends up reproducing spaces that internalize the old colonial tropes and reproduce them, but in by the formerly colonized, quote unquote. Is that to what extent do you think this is a sort of operative in these movements, the different feminisms that you discuss? I wonder if that's something that you also consider in your work.
Unmute. So I'm unmuted. The problem with I would hate to reduce the schools of thoughts around feminisms, feminist movements, and the MENA region to new colonialism or post-colonialism, to say the truth, because we are, and I tell you very, as a feminist myself, we're always used and our ideology hijacked by either Islamists or authorities, of course, dictatorship, who would want to maintain a certain power structure in their societies by promoting some over the others. Unfortunately, women are still perceived as a second-class citizens. They're still perceived as the other, even within their societies. So aside from ideologies, I think, just like Edward Said theories of travel theories, where feminisms have taken different forms and shapes through the historical context that any society went through. So it's, of course, it is embedded within them. The clashes arises when we see external forces trying to manipulate the feminist rhetoric within their, within their context. We saw it somehow in Iraq, we saw it somehow in different parts of the world. But this is also not to reduce the fact that those associations or NGOs have tried everything within the system to reach their goals. So unfortunately, in adopting whatever ideologies they adopt, all they do is, it doesn't reduce their causes, let's say. So again, I'm very hesitant to talk about ideologies when it comes to feminisms, because of course it is loaded with ideology. So we don't have to add that, second layer to it.
Okay, thank you. So the examples of digital activism, cyber activism, and the examples you've touched upon. I'd like to. Could you elaborate on the merit of digital activism? Because there are debates about that also sort of in the early days, maybe the first year of the Arab Spring, there were many who called these revolutions Twitter revolutions, Facebook revolutions, and as if they mainly exist in the cyberspace, and then they find real life materialization. So there are pro and con debate. There's a pro and con debate to the merit of digital activism. To what extent do you now, 10 years on, with also very, very different views on platforms such as Facebook, to what extent do you think they're prevalent in shaping the debate around feminism, the improving some of the causes adopted by the various feminist organizations or groups?
I believe that the last decade shows and answers to those skepticism regarding social media and the role of social media. And yes, I remember at the beginning, there was lots of skepticism around the use of Twitter, Facebook within the revolutions, but looking at it after 10 years, how it grew and how it became a very important platform for activists, especially women activists. And we saw the domino effect. We saw when it started in Egypt, it took actually a hybrid form. So it was online, but they took the streets as well. But it was the main course of communication among them. And we see it in other parts of the world where women do not have the physical mobility or the mobility and the freedom of mobility that, for example, some women have in other parts of the world. We see it within closed societies like our societies in the Gulf and especially in Saudi Arabia. I think digital activism is a legitimate form of activism. We saw how it actually pushed the cons and the pros and the cons, of course, but if it wasn't that powerful, government wouldn't react to it. We see how now they go against women on Twitter because they were expressed their political messages or political ideas on Twitter, and we see them going after them. We see them going after some bloggers, for example, around the Arab world. And we see lots of bloggers actually being jailed for that. So the governments realize the importance of social media. And this is why even and thus the creation of bots, if you think about it. If Twitter, for example, and with its minimum capacity of words, didn't affect politics that much, I don't think anyone would have cared. But to create this huge trend of bots that actually promote certain political agendas and propagandas, it shows you that this is a very, very unique platform. The problem is, it's not, let me say that the issue would be if that was the only platform available for women. What I've noticed recently is because of social media, we were introduced to other activists. We were introduced to different movements across the Arab world There are many, many NGOs and civil society organizations. And because of social media, we're able to reach out to them, work with them, share toolkits, share best practices. So I'm a big fan, to say the truth. I've launched, and I have the only master's program in digital humanities in the college. And this shows how I think this area is very, very important.
Thank you. And I know you've also launched a podcast
Yes.
recently, right?
I have. I'm very happy about it. You know, those are the small forms of activism that, you know, as an academic, I don't do what others do, and I feel jealous. So this is my way of reaching out.
What's the name of the podcast?
Women of the Middle East podcast.
Women of the Middle East. We have a question from the chat. Have you noticed any state or institutional changes towards Middle Eastern women after the Arab Spring? If yes, in what direction?
Their voices have been amplified. I would say there has been a huge increase. First of all, there is the international attention. So the international focus has been on women in the MENA region. Of course, as I said, we have the issue of reframing. We have the issue of Western media trying to filter us down to a certain image while presenting our issues, our struggles, but giving us the chance, the air to voice our challenges worldwide is a huge thing. So we have the attention of the world, definitely. There has been an increase, a huge increase in women organizations all across the MENA region. There have been lots of successes, many successes. Of course, representation of women is very important, and to see the difference on a political level, you need to have women in politics. So we see a slight increase in women parliamentarian. We've got a good number in Tunis, Tunisia, and other parts of the world, Egypt, Lebanon previously, and other parts of the world. So yes, we see that the governments, whether they're doing it cosmetically or not, they're trying to show the world that they are honoring their international treaties as well. Many of which, of course, embed gender equality and embed women's rights as human rights.
Excellent, thank you. So you've observed an increased state and institutional interest in whether cosmetic, as you put it, or genuine. It does change the terms of debate even incrementally. We have another question. The asker wonders if you found it difficult battling between advocating for Muslim and Arab women and not completely condemning Arab and Muslim cultures, which is so easily done in the West. What I mean by this, when an Arab and Muslim woman brings up an aspect of their oppression, it is so easy for the West to take that as a generalization for all Muslim and Arab women.
Yes, it's extremely hard. It was easier for me to say that it was talking about Arab women in the West. It's easier because I have enough evidence and enough studies. So that's my backbone when I am to speak about, how distorted the image is in the West. It's harder to speak about it within your societies too. And again, because I think if we are to look at women's rights as human rights, it should be embedded within the political agenda. It should be embedded within the rhetoric of the government. Unfortunately, we're still suffering, especially in the MENA region, when it comes to gender equality. As you know, although it's in SDG 5, we're paid lip service when it comes to that by our governments, by different institutions. But this is political. It's what's important here is we shift the conversation. The Orientalist is reductionist. They reduced us to one image that where we had to be rescued. Do we need a rescue? Definitely not. And we know that there is a long history of feminism, a long history of activism, whether by men or women, to better their societies and better their lives. The Arab Spring was a wake-up call because it was down to economy. It was the economic that pushed young men and women to rebel. It wasn't religion, it was economy. And it really boils down to economic reasons, political reasons. Unfortunately, we know the Middle East, unfortunately, is going through terrible upheavals, wars, civil wars, refugees. The biggest refugees come from the Middle East. The biggest number of refugees come from the Middle East. So all of that should be looked at instead of reducing our issues to religion or men. There's bigger than that. So I think this is why it is difficult, but it's a conversation to have. And the more we have this conversation, the better. It starts a dialogue, at least.
Thank you. Yeah, this is very helpful because we have in attendance some younger students, some younger Muslim American, Arab American women who have their own struggles, and it is important for them to get your perspective, and it's important for them to see what was helpful for you in navigating this sort of being Muslim and Arab and women, and not be forced into the category of self-hate. We have another question about just the history of Middle Eastern or Arab feminism. Has it gone through waves like Western feminism? It's more of a historical question.
Definitely. So yes, different modes of movements of feminisms in the Arab world emerged because of their unique context. We see some of them are very developed, radical. We have radical feminism. We have Noel Saadawi, may she rest in peace, in Egypt. We saw the old feminism and we saw the new schools of feminism. I think what's lovely to see right now is how some forms of feminisms have been very advanced and have been very intersectional. So through the podcast, I've been introduced to young feminists, for example, and one of them is Khawla from Tunis, who's a Black Tunisian. And, I got to know that we have a Black feminist movement in the Arab world that is strongly based on this global consciousness of social justice and racial justice, emerged from, of course, Black Lives Matter and also Me Too movement. So it's very interesting to see that the gap in terms of times. So of course, I wouldn't say that the times coincided of the waves of feminisms in the Arab world with the Western world, but right now this gap has been reduced. So we do see intersectional feminism really, really strong in different parts of the Arab world, whereas in other parts of the world, feminism is still very, still new. Again, because of the social construct, because of the cultural construct of the context, feminists are navigating. Like, for example, in Qatar, I see that it's still very new Not very clear. It takes a digital form mostly because of the restriction in mobility, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It does exist, but it's not clear yet. So it really depends on where you are.
Thank you. We have another question also in the chat. The asker says, as Dean, you started the first MENA programs in Middle Eastern women and digital studies. Many of these students are women. What is your hope for the generation of women you're now training? How will they carry the torch forward?
It was very important that we produce knowledge about the Middle East, indigenous knowledge about the Middle East, instead of being consumers of knowledge. And unfortunately, we've seen this through many years of backwardness that we faced in the Arab world. I've been lucky, I've been fortunate to be able to do something to reshape higher education in my country. And it was very interesting to me, the conversations we had at the beginning when I established the Middle Eastern Studies Department here. Because
we lost you for a second, yeah.
So again, we adopted a term, okay, which is a Western construct, Middle Eastern studies, right? But it was very important for me because this is it's a huge tradition, academic tradition, which I wanted to continue, but this time continue through indigenous lenses. So it was very important for me to recruit faculty who are Arabs. Faculty have written about the Arab world. We've got two programs, Digital Humanities and Women, Society and Development, which is a Women's Studies Masters. So what do I want for the graduates? I want them to be their own people. It's the education right now gives you the tools and lets you be. I want to see more people who are participants in reshaping their own societies, their own cultures, making changes, being the change, which I really hope that this would be the case.
Thank you. Another question we have from the chat. Have the LGBTQ communities in Arab countries been incorporated into the feminist movement, or correction, might be movement?
No, it hasn't. And even when we spoke about Black feminists too, I think those new trends haven't been incorporated in traditional feminist movements. And there's resistance. I have to be very frank about it. Yes, there is resistance because as much as we are, again, I always promote the diversity of women's experiences. As much as we have many things in common, we're still afraid of the differences among us. And we're scared that those differences will be used against our causes. So I know that those definitely it has not been incorporated just like that Black feminist movements.
Yes, and if I might add, it's at least in the case of Palestine, because of the heightened colonial condition, there are examples where the feminist struggle and the anti-colonial struggle and the LGBTQ struggle intersect. And in the case I'm thinking of Al-Qaws, for example, based in Haifa. But they are to a large extent the exception that sort of proves the rule. I am trying to see if we have any more questions in the chat. If anyone has any lingering question, please do share it. I think this must cover it. I would like to thank you, Dr. Amal, for this talk, very rich talk, and for sharing your experience and expertise with us and with our guests, attendants. We hope to have you here in person, physically, and we're lucky that the technical glitches were sorted out. Thank you very much. Thank you for to our attendees, and we wish you a beautiful day in California and a nice evening in Qatar, in the Gulf. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, take care, everyone. Ma'as salam. Bye.
Assalamu alaikum.